All right, well, let's review triangles. As a fifth grader, I know you guys worked on this topic almost separately. Like, you classified triangles by their angles, and then you classify them by their sides. Well, really, the only difference as a sixth grader is you have to do them at the same time. You have to classify it in both ways. And I know our booklets look pretty good with triangles, right? Terms like acute, obtuse, and right refer to how you measure the inside of a triangle by its angles. And by the way, do you know every triangle has two acute angles?
Yes.
Every triangle has two that are acute. It's the third angle that gives it its name. If the third angle is acute, you got an acute triangle. If the third angle is obtuse, it's an obtuse triangle. And if the third angle is right, you have a right triangle, which makes these really easy to pick out. And then we classify them also by its sides: scalene, isosceles, and equilateral. So this would be a good opportunity for you guys to tell me what you know about triangles already as we look at number one. How would you classify that triangle if you had to do it in two ways, by its angles and its sides? Austin?
Scalene.
First thing we see is it's scalene. Doesn't matter what line you write this on, but I'm going to put all my angles on top since it says by their angles and sides. When he says scalene, the term means no congruent sides. They're all different. Alex? And it's a right triangle. Okay, now remember, here's an acute triangle. I should say here's an acute angle. Here's an acute angle. And that symbol, the third angle, is right. That means it's a right triangle. Number two, what do you know about this one? Gabby?
It's scalene.
It's also scalene. No congruent sides. And by its angles,
It's acute.
it's acute. Because look, 1, 2, the third angle is going to name it. And yep, it's definitely acute. Number 3, Thomas, this is called isosceles. In your booklets, you might have given a picture of isosceles with these symbols, meaning that those two sides are congruent, even if you didn't know the measures. That would be a quick way to tell. Now, how about by its angles? Thomas? Yeah. You're starting to realize that if you can pinpoint an obtuse or a right, that's going to name it. There's your obtuse angle. It's over 90 degrees. Number 4, angles and sides. New volunteers. Alex? It's isosceles again. Good. And Scott?
Right.
Do you see a right angle? Which one do you think's right? Do you think this one here's right?
Oh, no.
I would just be careful because first thing we'd look for would be the right angle symbol, like in number 1. And if it has that symbol, that would be your identifying mark. So if it's not right, we know these two are acute. It's that one we question. What do you think? Yeah, you could always put a corner next to it, right? If I used a rectangle, one of the things we try to find is it a right angle? And you could tell right there, nah, it's a little bit less than that. So we definitely have an acute one there. Anytime you're trying to measure an angle and you don't have a protractor, take the corner of your piece of paper. And if it lines up, it's right. If it's less than lining up, it's acute. And if it has more degrees, then it's going to be obtuse. Number 5.
May I have your attention, please? Once again, I would like to announce for the second year in a row, James Elliott has won the county spelling bee. James, are we going to Kirkland?
All right, number 5. How would you classify this one? Looks new, Gabby.
Equilateral.
All right, one thing we know is we have a term called equilateral. Gabby, what does that mean for us?
That all the sides are equal.
Yeah. All the sides are the same. So symbol-wise, it'd look like that. If you didn't have your measure, they're all 5. Anytime you have an equilateral triangle, all the angles are the same. And I know last year as a 5th grader, you learned that the 3 angles in a triangle have to add up to 180. Remember that? Well, if all 3 are the same, if you divide 180 by 3, you get 60. So every angle is going to be 60 degrees in every equilateral triangle, which, by the way, means every equilateral triangle is also a cube. Okay? There is a name called equiangular. What do you think that means? Equiangular. Alex? That would be all angles are the same. Very good. And number 6, I know it's deceiving. That is a right angle symbol, so we'll have to call this a right triangle. Yep. And the sides are all different. Right scaling. Very good. Okay? So triangles, something very important there. Classifying by 2 measures, by its angles and its sides. And then just a couple questions here to finish up. When we talk about 4-sided figures, every 4-sided figure is called a quadrilateral. But what you drew in your booklets, some of them were special. Anybody know the parallelogram with 4 congruent sides? Andrew?
Square.
Close. It would be if it said 4 congruent sides and 4 right angles. So think of the shape that doesn't have to have 4 right angles, but all the sides have to be the same. You want to change your answer? Not parallelogram, Austin? This is a rhombus. Very good. Okay, now, what's it look like? I bet you in your books, maybe drew something like this. A rhombus is a parallelogram with 4 congruent sides. It doesn't have to have 4 right angles. If it did, it'd become a square. How about a rectangle with 4 congruent sides? Now, when we say rectangle, 2 things pop in our minds. 1, it's got to be a parallelogram, and 2, it's got to have 4 right angles. So now, a 4-sided figure, Gabby, with 4 congruent sides and 4 right angles.
A square.
That's the square.
I thought it was rectangle because you said 2 things.
Well, right here. It is a rectangle, which means it has to have 4 congruent sides, or I should say 4 right angles, but then it says all congruent sides. So we are actually now talking about the square.
You said the 2 things that popped in my mind. I said rectangle.
Oh, I got you. Isn't it funny how the word rectangle has the word angle in it? Which means that's what's so special about a rectangle.
Triangle.
It has 4 right angles.
I just now noticed that triangle.
I just noticed there's 2 number 8s. So let's call this 8A and 8B. Name the quadrilateral with only 1 pair of parallel sides. Gabby?
Trapezoid.
That's a trapezoid. Trapezoid. So if I have this side parallel to this side, but these 2 are not, there's your parallel symbols. So in our booklets, I asked people to use the parallel symbol. Use the side, equal side symbol. So there's some of them. Now, number 9, name 3 quadrilaterals that are also parallelograms. 3 quadrilaterals that are also parallelograms. Remember, a parallelogram, if we drew one, it just means that the opposite sides have to be parallel and congruent. We've actually talked about 3 of them. A rectangle is a parallelogram because the opposite sides are congruent and parallel. Thomas? A rhombus. Yeah, that makes sense because look at number 7. Number 7 says a parallelogram. So a rhombus is a type of parallelogram. And there's one more that has angles like a rectangle and sides like a rhombus. Is a square. Very good. Okay? For today, this is where we need to pause or stop. Homework-wise, I said tonight would be numbers 1 through 6 and 13 through 17. The only thing that makes me question that